Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I have an exciting one for you today. It's full review time on the Hawk Deadlock Model C. This is, in my opinion, the coolest and best and most wonderful and most exciting and just greatest out the front knife that has yet to exist or that currently exists in the history of out the front knives. In my opinion, this is the king. I'm really over the moon happy with this knife. So I'm going to start by talking about my experience with this knife so far, because there's some important things in here that I think are just important to note. One, I got this knife at USN, which is a show that happens in Las Vegas, and it was my first time going this year, and this was the first knife that I bought because it was the one that was most important to me to get. I ran right over to their table right as the show opened and got this. I had handled Gavin Hawk's the night before in they call it the Cove there. It's like the hangout pre-show and after the show. It's where people hang out, right? So I was curious about these knives for a long time. I've gone down the rabbit hole of Microtech OTFs, and there have been some things that across the lineup just not been ideal for me. Some models are more aligned with my preferences than others, but there's always been, at the end of the day, this inherent limitation in the platform of an OTF that just makes it feel sometimes like I wonder how worth it they are, because they tend to be pretty expensive, a lot of them as well, especially under the Microtech brand. So anyway, this doesn't have blade play. That's what I'm hinting at. All OTFs that I've ever experienced prior to this one had blade play. This one does not. It feels like a fixed blade, which is remarkable. I've watched their video on how it's built, and still I struggle to even try to explain it, so I'm not going to even attempt, but it blows my mind that there can be moving parts in here and that it can end up this solid. And on folders, I felt like out the side manual folders that have felt this solid before. It's possible to get a knife to feel this solid on that platform. I know that, but I didn't know it was possible on this one. So let's rewind a little bit from today, but I guess fast forward from me getting it at USN. A little bit after I got home from USN, I did a video comparing some OTFs. At the time, I still had my Guardian Tactical Recon 035. I've since sold it. I still had my Microtech Troodon. I since sold it because of this. It's very easy to get rid of those once I had this. The only Microtech that I have around, other than the Exo set, which I kind of use as a money clip sometimes, is my Hera, which I'm going to be doing my full review on very shortly. But I had the Guardian Tactical, the Microtech Troodon, the Microtech Hera, and this out all at once. And I was doing kind of a comparison across the couple of brands and just talking through my experience with each of them and comparing, right? And this, obviously, is different in the lockup department. But in that video, I mentioned that it had the slightest bit of wiggle in the blade. It was slight, very, very slight, but it was there. There was a tiny bit of movement. And I sent the video after recording it to Gavin Hawk, because typically when I include a knife from a maker in one of my videos, I like to send them the link in case they want to watch it. If somebody in a few months, when Avants start landing, records a video of their Avant, puts it on YouTube, I would like to see that. As the designer of the knife, that would be really, really fun for me. So I just try to do that. Anyways, I sent it to Gavin, and then I don't know, not very long after, maybe a half hour, he messaged me and he was like, "Hey dude, it's supposed to have no blade play." And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. And I tried to set up my camera and tried to show him, and it's really hard to film with your phone, showing what's going on in that department. But I tried to show him, and I explained it's very, very minimal. And I said in the video, this is not a lot of blade play I'm talking about, but everybody I've ever heard talk about the Hawk Deadlock, whether it was the Model B or the Model C, has said it has no blade play, zero. Bank vault shut, nothing. And at the time, the Deadlock Model C that I had, which is the same one, it had a little bit of wiggle. And so I was like, maybe people are just like exaggerating because it's so minute that blade play that's in there that it feels kind of like nothing in comparison to the others, or I didn't know what was happening, but mine had a tiny bit. And he was like, no, 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 it's supposed to have none. And I was like, okay, do you want me to take it apart? What do you want me to do? Like, because I would like to have none too. That sounds great. I already loved it. Like, an incredible amount. I was not even upset at all that it had the tiniest bit in it. I was still elated about the knife. And he was like, no, 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 send it in and I'll get it right. So I sent it right into them, and real quick, they got it right back to me. And ever since it's been back, it is absolutely perfect. And I talked to Gavin a little bit after the fact, because not only did he insist that I send it in like an awesome, awesome person, but after it got back, he checked in immediately. It was like, hey, is it right now? And obviously, it had just left his hands. He knew it was right, but he wanted to make sure I was happy as the customer, which is awesome. When you spend $1,000 on a knife, that level of customer service is great. Anyway, as I was talking to him about it, I didn't really ask for exactly what he thought had happened, but I imagined what probably happened was that, like, in the preparation for USN show, as they were getting a bunch of knives ready on a brand new production model that they were just beginning production on, probably something in assembly just got slightly overlubed or something really small. And I would have to guess that's what happened. And I even told him, I was like, look, man, I get it. I used to help build vehicles for SEMA, which is a huge automotive aftermarket show that happens once a year, also in Vegas. And like, there were times where in a 72-hour period, I was like wrenching on cars for 58 hours. So like, you're like not sleeping, you're getting ready for the show, and it's like you have deadlines to hit, and it gets a little crazy. And I was like, I imagine something like that probably happened, and we kind of laughed about it together. And I was just like, thank you so much for making it perfect for me. And so at the end of the day, honestly, I'm kind of glad that happened, because I loved the knife so much, even when it had that tiny bit of wiggle in it. And if it had come completely perfect, maybe that would have been objectively even better. But I'm kind of glad I got to have like a little bit more interaction with Gavin and see how well they took care of it. When something was 1% off, they made it 100% correct, like easily. And I just like that. I like that you're buying from this little company in Idaho that now has just a few employees, and they've just started getting machines, and they're making these in-house, which they've never really made production knives in-house before. They've made prototypes and stuff. But for them to be doing the production themselves, and them to be like acting like that as a business, just made me really happy. I really, really liked that. So I tip my hat to Gavin for handling it in that way and making it so perfect so easily. All right, so this knife has now been back in my possession for, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe. And before it left, it had already been in my possession for like 5 or 6 days, and I'd been carrying it every single day. This knife just didn't want to come out of my pocket because I love it so much. I find it so exciting. So before sending it to them and it coming back, grand total, I've probably carried this knife at least 15 times, probably for a whole day each time, or if you add up half days together, consider it 15-ish whole days worth of carry, I think is fair to say. And I freaking love it. This knife, it makes me so happy and so excited, in such a exciting way too, because I've wanted to love an OTF for so long. And I've tried so many to finally get to this point where I have this one, and I've found the one that just scratches the itch so completely. So I guess let's just kind of go through rapid fire the typical things I talk about: ergos, carry, cutting, and action. Ergos on this knife are freaking great. I love that there's like this ramp on both sides, so it's kind of a choil here, if you will, and a ramp here when you hold it like this. For me, I just feel really locked in. Saber grip feels great. Hammer grip also feels great. Reverse grip, being a dagger ground double-edged blade, should feel fantastic, and it does. There's no such thing as a draw cut because it's double-edged, so everything is a draw cut technically. It's just awesome in hand in any orientation. The clip doesn't bother me whether it's on this side or this side. It's a symmetrical, wonderful handle shape, kind of a Coke bottle or hourglass, or I don't know what you want to call it, but it works. It is a great shape handle. Everything is chamfered well. There's no harsh edges. The hard anodizing on this aluminum feels excellent to me. The carbon fiber is finished really, really well. These inlays look fantastic. You've got this kind of traction patch here too, which is nice. The button, it is the best OTF switch that I've ever experienced. It's just in hand, all of the physical feeling sensations I get from this knife are excellent. I really, really love the way it feels in hand. Let's talk action, because it's an OTF. That feels right. It's the best. It's the best of any OTF I've ever handled. I have felt OTFs that felt maybe like they fired harder, but that usually comes at the cost of them being a total B to retract. They just, when it really fires crazy hard, oftentimes it sucks. You're like fighting with the button to get the knife back in. But on this, it is just absolute. Let's see if I can do this in a way that you can see. Easy, precise, clicky, like it feels like there's a clean break. I think in my comparison video I talked about this, but I equate it a lot to like a trigger, right? Where if you're into firearms and you've done a decent bit of shooting, you know the difference between a mushy trigger that doesn't have like a clean wall, and there's a lot of mush and a lot of take up, and then it just kind of breaks, and it is what it is. And you can kind of get used to those triggers and you can get good with them, but it's different to have like a really nice competition 1911 trigger, which the take up is, if it's even there, is smooth, right? But then you get to a defined wall where it's like, oh, this is where if I push any further, it's going to snap. And that's what I feel here. There's like, even on the way back in, there's this take up that, granted, unlike a trigger, it's kind of heavy. If there was take up this heavy on a trigger, it'd feel a little intense, but it's good because it doesn't open in your pocket because of that. But it's smooth, it's reliable, it doesn't feel like there's a buildup or anything, and then all of a sudden you hit this wall and snap. And it's better than any Microtech I've handled, it's better than any Guardian Tactical I've handled, it's better than any Heretic I've handled. I'm sure there are others, but it's the best OTF action that is out there. And I don't want to say it doesn't fire hard either. It's just not like the hardest firing OTF I've had. I think the Combat Troodon is probably the hardest firing OTF I've felt in terms of double action OTFs. Halos and stuff that are single action obviously fire even harder, but for double action OTF, it's still authoritative, and it makes this awesome sound. Just like a snick. I love how deliberate it sounds and feels, and the whole thing is just, it's tactile in a way that I love. So action is stellar, both in and out. The in almost feels like it's like slurping the blade in, like it's a noodle, which sounds weird, but it has this like, I love it. Okay, so action is phenomenal. Ergos are phenomenal. Let's talk carry. This is one that I thought was gonna be a bummer for me personally, because I prefer deep carry knives. Like, here's a good example of a pocket clip that I'll rave about. This is a Baby Banter Civivi, NAFSCO, Ben Peterson designed. It is a loop over style clip that comes all the way to the butt end of the knife. It is countersunk into the scale, and the screw is countersunk into the clip, so it's perfectly flush there, and it's completely deep carry. I love that. That is an example of one of my favorite types of clips right there, right? On the knife that I designed with Ryan, the Left Concept Savant. Wire, deep carry style clip, loop over, all function, right? I love clips like that are deep carry and just work. This is not a deep carry clip. This is a milled titanium clip that is hinged, which in my experience, I've never really found a hinged clip to work for me. I haven't owned any, but I've just tried a couple here and there. I'm struggling to even remember what I would have tried it on. I feel like one of them was a is it a sigil or something? I don't know. Anyway, it's just not a thing that I would even expect to like. And if you look too, you're only getting to there with the clip. So there is this much knife sticking out of your pocket at all times. And that's typically kind of a pet peeve of mine. But on this, for some reason, maybe it's because I love the knife so much in every other way. Maybe it's because I don't know what. I don't really mind all that much that there's so much knife sticking out of my pocket. And on top of it, it is probably the most functional clip in terms of like ease of getting the knife out of my pocket and into my pocket that I've ever experienced. A lot of people oftentimes like hate on deep carry clips because it's like, oh, well, I grabbed the knife from the piece that's sticking out, so I need it. I don't do that on non-deep carry knives. If I'm grabbing the Arius out of my pocket, which also leaves kind of a lot sticking out, I put my thumb in on this side and grab, and then I kind of grab from like the bottom of the clip most of the time, and I pull up like this. So I don't grab the top end of the knife or like the lanyard tube, or I don't put a lanyard on, especially. That's not me. I don't do those things to get a knife out of my pocket. And I don't find that it slows me down to have a knife deep in pocket. But this feels like it proves the point that I've never gotten. It like the way that this knife sticks out of pocket, and you've got this perfect spot back here to kind of put your thumb on, and then you've got this hinged clip, which has this jimping on it right here, and you can grab and it releases from your pocket, so it becomes incredibly easy to pull out quickly, or frankly to put in easily, because you're naturally grabbing back here and you've got this natural like point of tension where it works with that hinged mechanism, and it's just genius in a way that works that I expected to kind of hate. And I love the way that this knife goes in and out of pocket. I love the amount of retention it gives. I just find it so functional. And it's different from anything else that I have. And that kind of makes it fun in its own way too. I don't know. I'd still like, in general, I prefer deep carry. But for this knife, I wouldn't switch it. I wouldn't switch from this clip to a deep carry clip because it's so satisfying the way that it works. It's like, it feels like engineering accomplished. I don't know if that makes sense. And on top of that, this knife is very light. Again, all the edges on it and everything are smooth and contoured. It's, for the size of it, it's frankly a pretty long profile. It's fairly thick. It wouldn't seem like it would be comfortable to carry, but I love having this knife in pocket. I really haven't minded it at all. Even carrying it front right pocket as a primary, having my wallet in pocket next to it, I've had no issues reaching in past it to get to my wallet. It's not so long that it's sticking out awkwardly. Everything about it just carries well. I enjoy carrying it. And part of that, probably, to be fair, is how exciting the knife is to me, that it's like, even though I can feel it there a little more than some other ultra slim, ultra lightweight knives, it's like, that's my Hawk Deadlock Model C that I feel in my pocket. So it's kind of exciting that I just remembered that that's there. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, so we've talked ergos, we've talked carry now, we've talked action, so let's talk cutting. A gripe that I've had with the platform of OTFs, not so much with the knives themselves, but sometimes with the fans of the knives, is I've had more than one person, a few over a decent span of time, try to convince me or try to explain to me or try to tell me that I'm wrong when I say contrary. Try to say that OTFs are as good at cutting. Double-edged, out the front knives are as good at cutting, like slicing tasks, as out the side, manual opening, taller grind, single-edge knives. That's just not true. Geometry is important. I've done videos on it. This knife isn't designed to be a slicing dream, okay? If you're designing a knife for slicing, you want to do something like a nice tall grind that gets thin behind the edge, and there's not a bunch of resistance building as you pass it through a sheet of material. Like, it should separate things with ease. A double-edged dagger ground blade, that's not what it's designed to do. A double-edged dagger ground blade is designed to pierce things. That's what it's for. But it also has full edges on both sides that are designed to cut things, so it can slice, right? And this is no different from any Microtech or otherwise, double-edged OTF that I've had, in the sense where the cutting geometry isn't incredible for slicing tasks because it's just not meant to be. That said, the edge that they put on, and from what I understand, Gavin is hand grinding and he's the one sharpening all of these knives at this point. I don't know if that'll change over time, but I hope it doesn't, because my goodness, this is probably the sharpest. Couldn't even really call it a factory edge because they're like a small shop. It's him, but smallest, or this is like the finest, nicest edge that I've ever gotten on a knife new. I'm confident in that statement. And the way that it comes to a point at the tip too, it is just absolutely mean, and it's perfection. It is such a good edge. So I've been using this knife like crazy for opening soft media, things like cardboard and softer, right? Bubble mailers, it just slices right through. Going through tape and processing some cardboard, it's great for it. And the fact that there's no play too, it's so much more confidence inspiring to cut with this knife than it is with other OTFs. So I've just liked putting it to work, and it's done incredibly well. The blade's done in 20 CV. The edge is phenomenal. The point is insane. It will go in to anything you point it at. You got to be careful with this tip because it is absolutely intense. But yeah, as OTFs go, it is a joy to use because the edge is incredible and it locks up so solid. But it's still not going to like slice better than a pair of 3 through a bunch of cardboard. It's not designed to. It's designed to open humans, not boxes, which may sound brutal or whatever, but it's a double-edged dagger ground blade. Why hide the ball on that? Anyway, so yeah, cutting for an OTF is the best I've experienced, especially on a double-edged one. Action, absolutely top tier, the best. Carry, really, really good. Ergo's phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the current just like absolute king of the hill when it comes to OTF knives. It's just perfection. It is so good. And it's not just the lockup, right? Like, to create a knife mechanically that locks up perfectly solid like this does is only part of making this such a great knife. Like, that's the main talking point, right? Is that they've solved that problem with OTFs. But they've also built a really, really good knife around that solution. And they've created the end product that's not just that. Like, it is objectively phenomenal in every way that I judge an OTF by. So, yeah, I can't recommend this enough. They are not cheap. They're definitely expensive. I got mine at their table for $1,000. I know that their list is long for people who are waiting for these, so they're probably going to be pretty hard to get for a while. That's all a bummer. I get it. I wish there were infinity of these so people could just have them and that they were cheap. But that's not the way it is. They're difficult to make, and they're just starting doing their own production in-house. They're going to be expensive and few and far between for a while, but it is absolutely, in my opinion, worth it. I've spent, I don't know, $800 plus on Microtechs that had blade play and rattle and just weren't perfect. This doesn't rattle. Listen. Not at all. No rattle. Even when it's open, nothing. Like, the difference between this and some other high-end OTFs feels silly at this point. And so, yeah, I'll probably keep the Hera because I really like it and it's cool in its own way. I'm okay with having both, but I don't see myself ever getting rid of this. I can't picture it happening. Never say never, I guess, but like, this knife makes me so excited and happy in a way that very few knives have ever been able to. It is incredible. So I guess that's it. That's my full review on the Microtech. Sorry, just called it a Microtech. On the Hawk Deadlock Auto Model C. And goodness, it is so much better than the Microtech. All right. There we go. Calling it good. Thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one.